All right, let's give this a shot. I definitely did not just put these together right now. So I've been thinking about identity a lot, and so it's really cool to just be in a room of people that are just thinking about identity tools. And I think one of the most important use cases for identity tools is identifying trusted humans. So I want to talk about that today. I think one of the best reasons why you want to build identity tools is to assess whether who you might want to co-build things with or coexist with in a digital environment, whether that's a community, app, social network, etc. And who do you want to co-build things with? I think it's people that are broadly trustworthy. And why am I thinking about this? I am the Gitcoin Passport marketing lead, and which we'll talk about shortly. And I'm a core contributor to Zuzalu. And I've been super immersed in this universe that was conceived by Vitalik about a year ago, which is focused on building basically useful tools for humanity. This community came together in Montenegro in a kind of like semi-spontaneous way in what was called a pop-up city in Montenegro at the end of March to the end of May, and I helped put together an experiment that just ended yesterday, a 2-week pop-up village in a neighborhood in Istanbul, and it's a very nascent community where we're thinking a lot about like who belongs in this community, who do we want to co-build this community for, basically innovation for the public good. And I want to make this like general for other people building other communities. I think it's pretty reasonable to involve people who are broadly trusted in the community, like to help say, who should we let in? So Juan Benet is getting very involved in Zuzalu, and we're very open to his recommendations about who might contribute to this mission. But that seems like a very limited kind of algorithm for determining who should be let in, right? Who else do we trust? And so we've been thinking about this, right? Like, okay, I think it's people who step up to volunteer. There's been a lot of amazing people that we now really want to step into more contributing roles based on like their very tangible past performance. And then there's also people that kind of just like sense make into what gaps we have in the community and these pop-up villages. And they're like, oh wow, like we didn't have to ask for your help and you contributed. So yeah, we definitely want you more involved. And then we've been thinking a lot about how, just because you did a good job and maybe you volunteered a bunch, doesn't mean that the trust that you develop in the community is permanent. It's very risky to have false positives, right? And let's say you volunteered a bunch and you use that trust that you built out to scam a bunch of people in the community. We should have a mechanism for slashing the trust that you have been given, and maybe you should never be allowed in the community again. And so everything I said so far might be obvious to you. This kind of almost feels like something we've evolved to do, kind of sense into who is trustworthy, have a semi-permeable border of like who's let in, let people prove themselves, and if they do something really messed up, make sure they don't come in again. What happens if you want to create a community or app that wants to scale, right? Have thousands of members. We're not really evolved to manage this kind of amount of trust that individuals have at scale. So we're still figuring out a ton with Gitcoin Passport. But this is a beginning of an attempt to try to solve at least some use cases related to identifying trust. So with Passport, a user can suggest their trustworthiness by proving their unique humanity. They can earn lots of unique humanity points by aggregating identity providers like ENS, IDENA, Civic, and more. And a principle is that the harder it is for a bot or bad actor to earn a credential, the more trustworthiness points that you get. And we're also exploring, like, okay, if you are trusted by other trustworthy humans, you get more trust points. And if you do something clearly bad, you lose your points. And we're in the beginning process of this sort of social graph creation called identity staking, where like you can basically put up valuable tokens on other people and with a statement that's basically saying, hey, seize my token if the person I am vowing to be trustworthy is found out to not be trustworthy. Something that we've learned so far is that identifying trusted people is hard. So I talked about how, like, you gain trustworthy points by collecting these different credentials like Civic, IDENA, ENS, etc. But that's like, let's be real, that's pretty, it's the idea of centralizing in a way all these different parts of your identity is scary to a lot of people, especially like very privacy conscious people. Also people that have like 15 different ETH addresses, understandably, right? Gating participation can also block newcomers. So going back to small communities, you don't just want to have people that know like powerful, unanimously valued people. Like, I should not have to know Wambane to get access to an event, right? There should be other ways to participate in a community. So practically speaking, like we learned through Gitcoin grants with Gitcoin Passport, if we required too much of a score to get a matching bonus for Gitcoin grants, that blocks out tons of newcomers, right? Especially people in so-called developing nations that, it's very hard for them to get a score. And there's also this pitfall of saying, like, if you say that doing this action, earning this credential, earns you this amount of points, you just have so many people that will just farm that credential and create like even like an industry around automating getting that credential. And so the credential becomes less valuable because it just becomes something that people game, right? And we don't know how to solve that. We want to make it very transparent how you get a credential, but airdrop, like, it's just like this catch-22. So I guess this is all to say that we're still trying to figure out how to identify trusted humans at scale. If you have managed to get a score of 20, and we just have like a one-on-one human conversation, and I have a sense that you're not a Sybil attacker, I would love to talk to you, and you can help us train our algorithm to be better. And if you can't get a score, that is great feedback. So we'd love to talk. And anyone that wants to talk about community and trustworthiness, I'm here to talk as well.
Somebody who's got a lot of money, it might mean nothing for them to stake some tokens on somebody's reputation. And that also could encourage rugs, because it's like, okay, now there's just a cost of tricking people, and the bunch of us are going to stake on each other. And if we can pull enough money from the DAO, then it starts to be, it's like, to me, reputation and money are so separate. In fact, often the opposite. Like, how are you thinking about that? Like, when you create staking for reputation. Sid and I had a long talk about that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a very challenging problem. I think that there's a one thing that the team is, I think, making transparent is that it's hard to get around this notion of cost of access to like Web3 services. Like any sort of app that like has like, hey, we require these sets of credentials. Like there's a way to calculate the cost of achieving those things, and it's an imperfect thing that we're trying to do. We're trying to make it easier for projects to have a higher cost of automating the ability to just get the credentials. We call it the cost of forgery. I personally, as a community builder, know as well that the best way to determine whether you want someone in a community is to have like a good conversation with them. And this is basically what I'm trying to illustrate, that it's very hard to know how to automate the process of determining whether someone is trustworthy. I don't know if this directly answers your question. I think something like a Gitcoin passport score should not be a binary yes or no. Someone's in the community. Maybe it's one of many signals, right? Maybe there's still an application process, right? If it's for like a community. Again, I think that if it's just overly binary and gameable to get access to something valuable, that experience becomes less valuable because it kind of becomes less human. Because so much of why we like a person in the community is not because they collected a bunch of like stamps, right? So yeah, I totally agree that this is a challenge. There's one more question.
Thanks. This is Andreas from Legacy. Essentially, you propose a social scoring, right? And I think that's specifically with the experience from China pretty problematic. So that's more of a comment. And then, so at Legacy, we have the sort of the same issue that we want to have people who run the community, and how do you make sure that they are qualified, that they are, make good contributions, and act responsibly. And so the thinking we have right now is that in order to get a seat on the board, you would have to make meaningful contributions, right? And the community would actually somewhat measure that. The measurement is always the tricky part, right? As you say, in a one-on-one or in a small setting, if you're in a project, who are the slackers and who are the true contributors, right? And so I think the question is how to get this human-to-human interaction into something essentially into software code. And I think you point out this is the issue, right? And I was agreed that is the big issue, right? How do you map the social interactions into some sort of a protocol?
Yeah, and just a quick point about the social credit score. Gitcoin Passport makes it we're making it easier and easier over time to basically create your own algorithm for what credentials yield what score. So we have a default score to kind of just to illustrate that you can basically create a scoring system. But again, like any scoring system, it should just maybe be like one signal of many to determining whether someone should get a leadership position or something. Yeah. This is a very, very difficult problem, and I think, well, ironically, you should probably trust leaders of projects that understand the limitations and when to actually use those tools and how to use those tools, instead of saying, yeah, this fixes identity, this fixes the ability to identify trustworthy people.